Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending our live webinar for the release of version 11. So today I'm really going to focus on all the new features and tools. Just to give you some logistics, my name is Julia Shaw, and I have here with me today Matt Backham. You'll notice when you logged in that you have a chat window. So during this webinar, you'll be able to chat and ask questions. So we're doing just a quick sound check. We're getting some feedback that my voice is not real clear. So stand by. Testing. Does that look good?
Much better.
That just went down.
That's good. It's perfect.
Perfect? Okay. Sorry, everyone. I just want to make sure everyone can hear. All right, let's begin. So first we're going to start with all of the new features that are in 2D. Now there are a lot of new updates and features that I couldn't possibly cover them all today in this webinar. So I will kind of tease you with what I think are some of the most interesting tools and ones that were clearly popular with a lot of our customers. But if you want to really learn everything, we are coming out with a nice, on our help page, a nice kind of one-liner that explains every single new feature. And this might be something interesting for you to download and go through. Okay, one of the, I think, most powerful new tool is the Add Fullness tool. So before you could do multi-fullness, one-point fullness, and add fullness. But one of the problems was you couldn't do uneven variable fullness, you couldn't do really adjust how far they were apart, angles were difficult, and after it slashed and spread, you couldn't really see the lines drawn. So let's go into the software. Basically, you click where you want your fullness to start from. So you would need to have a point there. Then you go into Tools, and you open up the tool. Now, what's one of the overall changes that you'll find throughout the software, again, is the updating of clear instructions on every topic. You're going to find that, and I'll point it out to you whenever we go into these different features. And it's so helpful because even today, I'll still click on a tool that maybe I don't use too often, and I will look down in the status bar and realize there was a feature there that had even been there since 10 that I didn't realize. Okay, so amount on first point. So I would like to enter how much I want to slash and spread on the first point. So I'm going to say, well, let's make it big. Let's do an inch. And now on the second point, meaning on the other side of the piece, let's say 2 inches. Then I want to have it be dashed lines. I'd like to slash. I'd like to have 4 slashes. I'd like them to be 1/4 inch apart on one side of the piece and 1 inch apart on the other side of the piece. And then you're immediately, oops, pardon me. And then you're immediately going to see lines drawn on the piece. Now, they're often very light blue, so I really want to show you something awesome, and then we'll do the tool again. Under Tools, Preferences, you can go into Mark Point Color, and you can change it. It's under Colors, General, Mark Point Color, and I like to change it to bright red. So now, and you're going to notice again through many of the features that I'm using, it's going to be much easier to see the bright red. So let's do this tool again. Open Fullness. I'd like to start with 2 inches on one side, 1 inch on the other. I'd like to see the dashed lines. I want to make 4 slashes, 2 inches apart on one side, 1 inch apart on the other side. And can you see where those slashes are going to be? And watch, if I switch them, it'll change that here as well. I can also have them go on the other side of the line. And then you click OK, and it slashes and spreads your piece with these lovely dashed lines. Okay, next feature. The next feature, now this was in version 10, but I just want to remind you and introduce it, and we've sort of changed how it works. But being able to create a dart by pivot points. Now imagine you would have to slash a piece and then open a dart and then join the piece back together to add fullness. And yet this tool allows you to just create a dart by pivot. So let's go ahead, open up a skirt on this. Excellent. All right, let's zoom here. So I'm going to go into the dart feature. I'm going to select dart by pivot. Let's open this piece up. Unprotect it. And now let's do a dart by pivot. So I'd like to have a dart open here. I'd like it to come maybe from this point right here. I can even type in how far if I alt click. I would like it to slash, to pull the fullness out from here and here. Again, I could have specified an amount. And look at this, I can spread it a certain amount. Now, for any of those clicks, of course, you could have pressed the Alt key to allow you to type in exactly distance, angle, width, and depth. Cool tool. Now I'm going to point out a tool that you probably didn't know of. Sometimes, now a better example would be a blouse, but sometimes the dart apex, actually, let's really do it on a blouse. The dart apex is not really the tip of the dart. So when you go to rotate a dart, you want to rotate not around, well, let's do this one. Okay. So sometimes the apex is different, and so before you remember, you would have to select it and select tools and darts. Well, look at this. Click on dart, and notice down in my status bar, it says if you alt click on the tip of the dart, it automatically locks you and lets you type exactly how far away the true apex is prior to rotating it to another location. What's nice about that is the darts stay at the same distance away and point correctly. Love it. That would be alt click with the dart tool. Don't forget to look down at the status bar. Okay. This is a new tool, Create Arc Piece. This allows you to create a shaped waistband, for example. So you can select, and it's under Piece, New Piece. So you can select the width, the length on the top, and the length on the bottom. And you get a beautiful arc piece. This was a request, a popular request from a lot of customers. Here's an arc and cut tool. Again, this was an interesting request by some non-apparel customers, but it can be excellent for making really interesting shaped darts, stylized darts. So all you do is you click arc and cut, you click on the tool, and you can start making a shaped dart. Again, look in your status bar. If I hit tab, I can have these beautiful shaped darts this way. If I press alt, of course, I can type in how far. And if I press shift, I can change the center of that dart. So you can have a really pretty shaped dart. Another option is that you can keep the dart there. So even though it's shaped, it's still a live, real-life dart. So let's alt-click, and I'm going to say don't remove that dart, because I may decide that I want to rotate that dart later. So that's popular as well. Okay. Well, don't forget, if you have any questions, please go ahead and chat them. Matt is here monitoring the chat window, even if it includes questions about tools I don't show today. Multi-fullness has been improved. This was also a popular request. So one thing that was really annoying about multi-fullness is the angles of the lines and messing around with that angle thing. So annoying that customers would actually just do one by one fullness because it was just too hard to figure out exactly what angles to type in. So let me go ahead and change my color to black. Sorry about that. We want to see this good. All right, let's zoom up here. Let's say I'm building a piece on a sleeve, and now I would like to make fullness here. So I'm going to select fullness. Now on a straight line, multi-fullness was easy. You know, you just click multi-fullness. How many slashes do I want? I want 4. There they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. Done. But what if you wanted to do it on a curved line? Got a lot trickier. And before I do it, I'm going to go back into preferences and show you another new preference under general, which is I can actually make a bold mark, and I can make them larger and red. So watch this, multi-fullness, boom, okay. Look at these big red marks that are really easy to see. Well, that's horrible. All I have to do now is click parallel. 4. Done. And you can even do it horizontal or vertical. So much better. Okay. Next. Okay, cut corner tool. Well, you know, cut corner tool. This was a request. Instead of round corner, you can just cut it right off. Pretty simple in the toolbox. There's a new dart property, make more exact darts. So let's say you have a dart that's on like a curved line on either side. So here we go. So here I have this shirt. Let's say I've got, you know, a nice shaped line. Well, that jog isn't really correct, the top of that dart. Well, if you double click on the tip of the dart and you select peculiar, it will actually add a different point and make a more exact dart. Let's be a little more shaped about it. I know this is not exactly authentic, but I want to challenge the tool a little bit. So when I click on this function and click peculiar, notice how it added additional points in the dart. That way when it folds, it truly is a shaped and perfect dart, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay. Okay, measurement chart preview. There's even a really good video on the help page that goes over this new function. So let's talk about this. This is super cool. Okay, so I'm going to open up a pattern that I've already created one for. Here we go. Let's hide our seam allowances. Now, under it's under View, Other, Measurement Charts. Now, basically, I like to dock it over here on the left. Now, what this allows you to do is teach this pattern how to measure itself, and then it saves with the style. You only have to type in all your different specification measurements one time, and then I can save that list, so I can have a standard list for all my blouses, all my pants, all my skirts, if I had the same POM list for them. How does it work? Pretty simple. So let's say I want to do a cross chest. So I'm going to say I want to make first a new chart. That's how you make a new one from scratch, but we already have one. So I'm going to make a new measure. I'll make a new one. Then I can name it. And you can actually just new, name, all at the same way. I'm going to do cross chest. Then I have to define it one time. Define. Okay. So first, I want to measure from here to, oops, I don't have a point there. That's okay. I can just click on the closest point wherever that goes, whether it's on the top or the bottom. Actually, it might be in the middle. And then I tell it, actually, I don't want you to measure along the contour. I want you to measure straight across. By straight, by X, by Y, or along contour. Then you go to the next piece. Okay. Here to here. And it remembers by X, that's nice. Next piece. And last piece. And again, I want to make sure I'm measuring at a certain amount. Sometimes you need a point, sometimes you don't. And again, it's by X. Then I say that's multiplied by 2. I can even add ease or a tolerance. Okay. It measures every graded size. It tells me the step of the grade between each size. I can also report this to Excel. Yay. And then I can save just this POM and open that in all my blouse files. What does that mean? That means now if I go in and I edit this pattern, I'm being obviously very obnoxious about that, I just hit update and it updates the chart. Also, when you select on any one of the known measurements, it highlights them in blue so you can see how that pattern was measured. Okay. Now I want to also now show you probably something that you weren't aware of that exists already in the compare length window, which some customers like even better than the measurement chart because maybe they don't want to measure the whole pattern. And that is when you're working on a pattern. Let's just quickly measure our armhole, for example. Oops, clear. Okay, so let's say I want to measure here to here. I want to add it here to here, etc., etc. Well, I can click this little chevron. I can say that total measurement. I could even write back, front, side, sleeve, and name those. Then I can click data, and I can say armhole. And I can say add. And I can go on and on and on and do that. And then later I've saved it. It's, close the file, open the file, and I can, let's clear this, it's all over, clear, clear, clear. I can go back and say, hey, can you please read that for me again? And it pops right back up again. You can also type in a scale or a shift, meaning the tolerance, and up that number. Maybe I'd like it to be multiplied by 2. So that's a little known little trivia there. Some people like that better because it's just quicker. And I think you can report that to Excel as well. Okay. So there's the measurement spec. There's a nice little video online too that teaches you how to use that tool really well. And of course, if you change your grading, it updates that as well. And there's an example of it in Excel. This was a tool that we got from another CAD system that everyone really liked. And so you can select now move along, tools, movement, move along. And maybe I want to move this in, this out on the same angle or up on the same angle. When I click on it, if I press the shift key and hold it, look, can you see that? I'm locked. I'm trying to move my mouse left and right, but I'm locked. So that's really awesome because you don't have to be so careful how you click. You're totally locked in. Now here's also a little trivia for you. Multi-move. Sometimes you want to use multi-move, but there's points in the way that you don't want to select. Well, guess what? You don't have to select them. You can go back and forth, select a bunch, deselect others before you actually commit to using multi-move. So I'm going to hit the hotkey for multi-move. I'm going to drag a rectangle around all the pieces. If I press, and see, look at those big red clear marks. And then if I want, I can select the control key and select additional points, or I can select the alt key and deselect points that I don't want to select. So let's do that again. If I press the shift key down and I make a rectangle, it'll automatically open up the box to move it. So you don't have to click, click to finish using the tool. So again, read the status bar when you're using the multi-move tool, and you'll be able to use all these different options. So again, I can make it a box, and then I can press the alt key and deselect, or the control key and select additional. Set walk group. This was requested by a lot of customers, and that's pretty neat. You want to be able to walk multiple pieces into multiple pieces, so it makes that a lot easier. Here's a good example. So I'm going to, hit the space bar, stack that there, select those pieces, go to my group walk tool, and I can say set walk group. Now what's neat is that it will remember that even later. Then I'm going to hit the space bar and put those pieces together, W for walk. Oh, and you notice how the piece turned red? That's the same mark point tool that you saw me change for my boxes. F11 and boom, boom, boom. Zooming in and out, and you can just start walking along. And you can click any line, back up, or change direction to another point. So if I want to keep walking on that line, I can. Now we have another tool that is called walk segments, and this actually was for a non-apparel customer that requested this, where they had 6 pieces it was in a car seat company. They had 6 pieces that walk into 7 pieces, and that was just so ridiculous. So you can actually use this tool called walk segment now that allows you to walk multiple pieces into multiple pieces. It's kind of like you're teaching it how to work. Again, I encourage you to go to our help site, and we have about 4 different videos under the walk segment tool to demonstrate all the different options for this tool. Oh, seam segment tool. This is totally great. And the reason that I say that is because there's often times where, that'll be a good example. There's often times where you select your seam allowance for everything on a piece. Okay. So I want seam allowance. I select all my pieces. I add basic seam allowances around everything. We'll say 1/2 inch. But now I want to change my necklines and my armholes to another thing. So instead of going one by one by one, I'm going to hit seam segment. I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to do 1/4 inch for the neckline. And then it remembers, and I just click on every grade point. And it'll just keep adding seam allowance to 1/4 inch. And it's just so much easier, so much less clicking. Everybody loves this tool. See that? Much quicker. Let's go my collar, and it goes just grade point by grade point. Okay, so there's about a lot more 2D tools for pattern making that I will review with you, a whole list at the end, but let's go into some grading tools that came out.
Okay. By the way, one of the things that they're asking is if you measurement in the spec sheet and have it update? I said no, but you want to go over maybe the segment length one more time.
Segment
Something
length?
like that.
The one I just did? I'm sorry, someone's asking me a question. The segment length tool that I just did? Okay. With the seam segment, this one. Seam segment. Okay, so you alt-click, and it'll bring up this dialog box, and then you can type in what seam allowance you want. Let's do, 3/8 of an inch. But then I want to disable it, and then I just click. Every grade point I click on, it changes that seam allowance in a clockwise direction. Does that make sense? Okay, beautiful. So let's get into some grading. Variation grading's been updated. So instead of just having the ability to make one variation grade, you can now make multiple variation grade. So here this pattern has a basic grade on it, and I want to do a length grade. So I'm going to go to my size table. You'll notice this is different from 10. And I want to create a new size variation, and I want to call it length. And then you just name it. Close. And then you would say, it comes up with a new size thing, and then I would say I want to insert one before, one after. Oh, and by the way, you can type in a number here. I want 3 sizes bigger instead of having to click, click, click. Okay, and then you name them. Maybe I have short, medium, long. Excellent. Now I have a new grading that's going on. So I'm going to open up my grading table. Let's undock that. And you'll notice here that now I have base and length, and I can switch back and forth. So then I'm going to go to my length, and let's add, it's going to be 1 inch shorter for the small. And then let's Shift C, Shift V, Shift V. And I could have done the hem as well. Now I can keep going again and again and again. So we even have some customers, in lieu of going all the way to made to measure, creating a bust, a hip, a length, a width, and basically grading a pattern with tons of different options. And if you decide, you know what, I think I'm going to grade 1/2 inch increments in my bust, 1/2 inch increments in my waist, you'll really very quickly end up with thousands of options for styles, different sizes. So for made to measure, this can really be an option. So I can insert a size, another one either before or after, etc., etc. So now I've got 3 variations. You can just keep going. Now, another thing that you can do is, let's say, okay, great, I have all these different variations. I'd really like to see the size 6 long. Well, before you had to do that size tree, and it was kind of crazy, and then you would be able to see every single size. Well, instead, I can actually select my pieces, and I can go in and I can select create piece for just that size, and I can go down here and literally say, okay, you know what, I want an 8 long with this hip, etc., 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 and then it will make that particular pattern, and I can keep going and going and going and going and pull that off right here inside the software. So I can actually have a single long size and pull that right off. Now you don't have to. When you go and select this pattern in marker making, it's going to ask you to choose your custom-made sizes there as well. So, does anybody have any questions about that one? That's a pretty cool one. Now, we added a whole bunch of new manual grading tools, and what I mean by this is, you know how you could move any size manually and you didn't have to have that be your base size? Well, now we've added all of the move proportional, move parallel, move along, and you can really basically tweak that grading very, very exact. align grading, all kinds of tools. And that's right there in your grading menu. Right here. So we have move point size, move size along, move proportional. So all the same tools that you had before, they're all new now. And we also have a new tool called grade by scale, and that was for a company. Oh, there's the select individual size. So you see here I have short, medium, long I can pull out right inside the software. We have a new type of point. This is a reference point. This was really requested when you're drafting or measuring or working on a pattern, or you just want to mark something but you don't want it to plot or go into marker making or anything. So it's just like a non-point, reference point. The mark point, as I told you, you can have a larger X, any color X, a bold X, and it really is much more visual to see a preview of what you're doing when you're slashing and spreading or when you're walking pieces. It'll be bright red. Grade by scale. This was requested by a glove company. So you can actually grade negative 10 or positive 10 by percentage in the X and in the Y. That's popular. I'm going to skip over demonstrating some of these tools because I want to get through as much as I can in this hour that we have. There are a ton of new preferences in practically every category. And again, we have clearly defined what each preference means. So one of the first preferences is when you create in the 3D, when you create a stitch line, it'll show you which direction it's folding with little arrows. If you want to have the file name in an open dialog box, those large and bold marks I showed you. Some people wanted to be able, when they open a pattern, to have their curve points showing or not showing. And also you can change your calibration for the zoom. So when I go here into my preferences, I just want to show you that when you select on any one of these features, we have very much defined exactly and reworded to make it easy to understand exactly what each of these options have been made for and how they work. So let's go through a couple more. Under the piece menu, you can copy and you can control what it names pieces, what kind of sign it puts there, whether it shows the piece description, when you flip text, how it flips the text. One thing I like is when you draw lines across darts or pleats, how you want it to split them. A lot more control there. In the build and trace, there are a ton of new ones. The coolest thing about build is you don't have to have leaks anymore. I know I can hear the cheering in the background. So for example, let's say I draw a line and I'm going to make an obvious massive hole in the leak, big hole. Now I'm going to go to my tools, preferences, build and trace, and check this so that when I build a piece, it won't bleed. Let's cut more. So B for build, boom. Oops. Making myself a liar. Let me do this again. Oh, is it the tolerance? I'm sorry. That's helping me. I'm okay? Okay. Aww. the cheering has just died down. I totally did this before. I guess I have a little bug. I have a bug. Sorry about that. Matt can tell you that it works.
Yes.
I can't be perfect. All right. No, it's just great because that was a huge complaint that even when it was connected and worked, there was always a problem. And now just because I'm stubborn, one workaround is that you can just create a guideline through and it will definitely stop then, just for FYI. All right. Okay. Again, there's a lot more different new preferences. They were created for many different reasons by many different customers' requests. Obviously, when one customer requests one thing and another customer wants it another way, we make a preference for it so you can turn that thing on or off. So here we've got new converters, nothing brand new, but just really fixed. Obviously, whenever we get a file from Lectra or from Gerber, which is mostly what we get, and then there's also Investronica and Micro, we beat up our converters more. So, you know, tiniest little things from a notch coming in correctly. As you know, sometimes the way the pattern is saved in Gerber might affect how it opens in OptiTex when we convert it, and Lectra as well. And so there's just been so many different developments and bug fixes in both these converters. So in V11, they're much, much stronger. And just to remind you that we can use PDS export to export a OptiTex file as Electra or as a Gerber. And then we can also export Electra marker. So I can convert an OptiTex marker into Electra marker. And that's been beat up also. And another reminder is you can go online. If you don't want to buy a full module converter, you can go online and convert online from our main OptiTex.com. And the first 5 are free, and you can even upload and download it with Illustrator or for any format you want. So that's nice when you don't want to purchase a whole module.
Can you show the deadline one more time?
Sure. If you want to create a guideline that's not just a straight up X and Y like that, you have a couple of options. You can shift click on a guideline and it'll change from X and Y. You can double click on a guideline and type how far you want it to move. This is popular for when you're speccing a garment. Perhaps you want to see, ooh, I wonder if the high shoulder point to center front is what I want it to be in my specification. Or you can do it on an angle. So let's say I want to select 2 points. Then I can select piece, guideline through. And then also, can you alt click on it and type a angle? Shift click, control click. There, control click. So if you control click on it, it will also bring up the same window that you could type an angle. Maybe I want that to be 45 degrees because I'm trying to make a bias piece. So you can have lots of fun. And you can hide them or delete them. Or delete one at a time. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go into 3D. Boy, 3D I think is just radically different. We have new shaders because we're moving closer and closer to the ability to do mental ray and rendering and really control light and shadows. We can now categorize it so that you can select all your 3D stitches to be double needle, another group of stitches to be single needle, and my goodness, you don't have to shift click 100,000 times when you're trying to change stitches. Now, once you create your stitches, then it's so easy when you just change a stitch, you just change one texture and all the stitches that are in that group will change. You can now separately control, for example, I make all the stitches a double needle or like an asymmetrical stitch. I can then just select one stitch in that group and rotate it 180 degrees. Same thing with the textures. So this is really especially nice for logo placement and engineered prints, because let's say you, it was kind of tricky before to put a texture across two pieces and then it would be flipped the wrong way and that kind of thing. So all that's been dealt with. We have a whole new color palette. You can actually import an ACO file. What that means is if you've created a whole bunch of color palettes in Photoshop, you can import them into OptiTex. If you have selected a color for something on one piece, it remembers that and shows up later when you click it for something else. I mean, I can go on and on and on. So let's kind of look at this for a little bit. So I'm going to open up my 3D window. I'm going to open up that dress. Okay. So you'll notice there are some new formats here. We've embedded the flattening toolbar and the advanced toolbar into this 3D thing. Let's go ahead and turn that back off. There's lots of options. For example, if you want to have a grid floor or a stage around her. There's tons of new preferences, a whole new category for 3D preferences. So you can have a default background, a default avatar, which always opens, whether or not to use it. You can set what you want your default stitch width and offset and button size and stitches size. I mean, all of these things just tremendously speed you up when you're trying to navigate and work in the software.
Show the seam resin.
You can control how big your magic glove's going to be. 0.39 would be itty bitty bitty, so maybe I want it to be 4 inches. You can set up what you want your standard flattening to be. There's all kinds of display options that I spoke about. Maybe you want to see a center axis down the model to find her exact center. This is really about being more compatible with the real 3D software such as Maya. And I'm going to turn that off. Okay. And then of course you can control all the different colors for all the different options. I think this is the most popular, well, some are really popular for every kind of 3D object, not just apparel. All right. And again, when you click on any one of those, it will describe for you what that feature is for. So now let's look at our new shaders. All right, so here's a new shader. It looks very different from what you're used to. We also have a complete new property window. If you remember the toolbox window, the other windows, piece property windows look like this. So now the 3D property window looks like that too. Plus there's some new options here. Excuse me. So we have all new locations, which really helps. You can have it top belt, meaning the center, front belt, left. So the pieces aren't all stacked on top of each other like they were before. We have the ability to control whether it's flat or folded. That's in the drop-down window, the percentage, left or right, whether you want it to fold either way, layers. A lot of this I'm sure you know. You can start naming groups of pieces. And then, of course, your fabric properties, which you're all used to. The pressure is now here in the property window. So when you're trying to add pressure to a garment, think of a wedding dress, think of a down jacket, think of non-apparel, stuffed animals, tents, backpacks, bags. You can add pressure to individual pieces, not an overall pressure, which makes it a lot more accurate. You can even control the actual angle. So let's say you're making a bag and you want it to be at right angles, two pieces to be at a crisp right angle when they drape together. We also have a whole new feature to have actual 3D hardware objects, such as buckles, links in a handbag. The hardware is on handbags. This was something that several of our customers absolutely needed, and they're moving into being able to develop real-time virtual design before going into production. Zipper teeth. Yeah, zipper pulls, any kind of object. And it's so simple. What you do is, wherever you want to have one of those 3D rigid objects, you create a button. Oh darn, I think I don't have my rigid parts loaded. That would be awful. Okay, then I would select, I put a stitch on that button, then I select on that stitch and I give it a path to a 3D rigid part. And it shows up in there, and then you can use the scale tool to move it. What I might do is, if I have time at the end, I'll open up a handbag and sort of go through that a little more detailed for you. Okay, so let's go back to the shaders. So, if you open up an existing pattern that already has all the textures placed on it, when I click Open Shader Manager, I'm going to have tons and tons of shaders because each one's separate. And I'm thinking that they will take like shaders in a future service pack from the release and automatically collapse them together. So you have the choice to just, for example, I'm going to just select all my shaders and delete them. I don't have to do this because if I don't want to update a style, I don't have to do this, but let's pretend so you can understand this a little bit better. All right, let's go back to a simpler pattern. So that's what I did here. I deleted all the shaders. So let's delete them again. There's nothing on this dress. There you go. Oh, notice the dress has a slight beige texture. You can have a default color on all your pieces instead of white. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm just going to stop that. Now, I'm going to select all my pieces. I don't have to, I can do this before or after. So I can create a new shader. Every time I click this, it makes a new shader. I can have a default one just for pieces. Again, it shows me the directions down here. Then I go into my shader window and I select my texture. I think we're going to run over a little bit. Sure. There's a question?
Yeah, just pause and we're good.
Okay. So I added that shader. I didn't even have to apply it to the pieces. When you select the shader for the default, it puts it there automatically. But let's say I wanted this piece here, like the collar pieces, to have a different shader. I click on Unused, and I add a different texture. For example, in colorways. I select the pieces I want, and I click Assign. So now all those So now all those pieces are assigned that different texture, and then from then on, all I have to do is change one texture. See that? And it changes all the pieces. Stitches work the exact same way. I just select whatever stitches I want, maybe not all of them. I just select whatever stitches I want, and I can then group those stitches and select one option for each stitch. Okay. Now, what about logos and textures and flipping? There's so much more to it. So let's say on the front piece, I want a logo. Well, I want it to now have two textures. I want it to have a base texture and a logo texture. So I just duplicate it. Then I go right to my shader and I add my logo. And obviously this could be for multiple things. Okay, I'm just going to be silly. Put an eagle. Now look here, I can now have many different options for how I want that logo to apply to the front piece. So perhaps I want it to be a splitting logo, which means I want it to be able to slide across two patterns, or repeat X or repeat Y. I can then control the scale, the color, the transparency, the shininess, all those different things for that shader. Now it looks like you have to click a little bit more than you did when it was just a texture window, but in the end it saves you so much time because you don't have to constantly be shift clicking on the multiple pieces to change them. You just change your shader. Another thing, you can create perhaps tiny little square pieces here, 4 by 4 for example. These pieces are ignored in the 3D window, and each piece could represent, for example, multiple different colorways, all for this same dress. So, instead of having to save 6 different files to have 6 different colorways, you just have these little tiny pieces that represent all the different shaders and colorways, and you can swap them back and forth. Now, I also mentioned we can import different colorways and palettes, so I can bring in, load a new palette that could come from Photoshop, load it from another pattern that had it. That was always a big issue before. Let's say I go in here and I pick a perfect color, and yay, I found exactly what I wanted. Then when I go click on another piece or another stitch and I go into my palette, lo and behold, it starts adding those colors here at the bottom. And when I hover over it, it gives me the information about that color. And I think I can even name the color. I forget how to do that. Anyway, okay, so let's continue. New property windows, I already mentioned that. Everything's been redesigned that way. You have new 3D properties. Now this is really nice because before, when you type layers, again, all the pieces would be all in the same position on the model. Now they'll be slightly separated from one another, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and you can even control how far apart those layers are. This is great for apparel and non-apparel. Again, the 3D preferences, we already went over that. We are constantly updating our models. One kind of exciting thing is we're working with importing and exporting now this standard FBX format, which is a 3D format. I think that's even more intelligent than the other Maya. I think it holds more data,
It's
more standard. So that's a new 3D format that we have.
JPEG of the 3Ds.
And there's new backgrounds, accessory poses, even facial expressions. And these models open in version 11 in this newer interface. I think you can save the models for version 10, but I think that you'll lose some of the Morse because it's a newer interface. And in fact, for all of you that are working on 3D, you should be in version 11, probably have been for quite a while now. So here's just some examples of some of our new models, the embedded new toolbars. That second toolbar there is nice to front, back, left, right grids. There's a lot of tools in here for working with non-apparel elements, such as being able to open up a 3D object and isolate certain parts of it, or delete certain parts of it to assist in flattening. Again, the new morphs, the shoulder pads, the poses, the walking. And there's been some additional tweaks to actually the basic posture to help more simulate fit models as opposed to standard mannequins, so that you maybe want to have wider hip area. We can go to much larger plus sizes now. things like that. So there's been a lot of options for them. Eva has the ability to change her leg position and arm position, ups and downs, and some of the new features coming are a T-pose position and a animated parametric model. And here's James, our new African-American male. And we also now have a toddler. Before it was hard to get the baby old enough or the girl young enough. So we have a toddler and new stages and scenes. Oh, I forgot about this. Stitches. So now we have a whole bunch of new options within our stitches window. Most people rarely even opened this window before. And now we've got all these new options, such as it tells you exactly what type of stitch you've selected. It tells you the length of your stitch. So this is good for production information. Eventually, I think that you'll actually select your 3D rigid part here as opposed to having to type a path for it. And then you can even name your textures. And this can be reported to Excel. So you can enter all these different options in here, switch back and forth between hiding and opening the stitch mode. And like I said, you can report to Excel, delete them all, print them. So stitches have become much more intelligent than they were before, where all you could really do was name them. There's a bunch more options that you can do with the stitches. Being able to assign a user-defined code, again, this can go right into like the sewing room or the sewing floor, production floor. Being able to create new stitch types, for example, to simulate piping and thicknesses. Again, I think this came a lot from our people trying to do pleats or pin tucks, as well as piping. And you can control the rounded edge, the corner edge, so there's a lot more features here. The flattening tools have been completely updated. It's much, much more stable. When you're drawing the line, you can move them and edit them as you're working. Save your model with the flattening. It's extremely solid now, much easier to use. Just to finish up, we do have an online virtual try-on, so you can do pre-baked models and clothes and do combinations of those different images. We have a couple of customers who are using our server to display their website. And of course it's in 3D. We also, here's just a beautiful render example, one of the latest ones that we've done. This was done in Maya. Eventually, we already have it where we're building shader libraries so that within the software, I forgot to show the scene browser. Within the software, you can actually control the bump, the shadow, the light, the textures, exactly like you would do in a more complicated software like Maya. So you can get very high-end, beautiful, realistic-looking images. And this is most particularly what's been blocking some designers from being able to sign off on styles. They just didn't think they looked realistically enough without the ability to have shaders, which are shiny, you know, like a render. Okay, in marker making, we do have some interesting tools. I know that I'm running over a little bit. You can have two different baselines on the same pattern, and then you can choose between those baselines. So you could have a bias baseline and a you know, warp or weft baseline, and then choose when you're making your marker between them. What's nice is if the style has two baselines, you'll get a big warning reminding you that it does. We have all new bump lines, so you can automatically move them to the end of a line, delete them, lock them. All you have to do is pull one off the side and right-click to get all these different options. You can make it a cut line. Cool. So, okay, the whole point of that is you can layer smalls, throw a bump line, layer mediums, throw a bump line, layer large, throw a bump line. That's one of the most popular uses for it. I mentioned earlier on variation grading. So now when you open a pattern that has variation grading, this window will pop up first. So you can select all the different sizes that you want with multiple variations. What's cool is that, let's say you select a hip measurement and oops, it doesn't grow that large, or you want one in between, you can actually add a new size. So it will add that new size for you. You don't have to go back to the pattern and add it yourself, and you can insert it in between, before, or after. What happened to my made to measure screen? Okay, this is made to measure. What? Okay, in the made to measure screen, what we've done is, there we go, sorry about that. There's been a lot of new updates in this. I know that made to measure is not our largest customer base just because it's made to measure, and that's not the most popular area, but it's getting more and more so. Before, what you're looking at was so confusing. You can have a basic dimension, and you can select which dimension you want to view and isolate all the others, so it makes it much easier to see what's going on. You can have a graded pattern, and you can have an intelligent size or your advanced size for your critical measurement, so that when you enter in a customer's measurements, it will take that graded pattern automatically and then edit all the other sizes. This helps a lot more with an accurate, beautiful made-to-measure pattern. Again, oh, I just mentioned that, sorry, the critical measurement. This I like too. It will show you the before and after, so you can actually see exactly how it changed the pattern. So you're left with a dashed line showing what the pattern looked like before. And lastly, you can really control your darts and have it fix that, so you can actually have a pivot dimension feature. And there's many, many more made-to-measure features besides that. So I want to show you one last thing. Clearly, I couldn't go through every single feature, and so we are putting together a nice document that goes through every single feature, line by line by line by line by line. And so here you can see that I could in no way have covered and demonstrated every single one of these features. Now, these are the flashier features. Of course, there's lots of different bug fixes and updates and tools that have been tweaked just a tiny bit. And again, I encourage you to come back to us and schedule a couple of hour online training to learn V11 when you decide. I also encourage you to contact us if you have a large installation, and we can help you make a plan on how to upgrade. We're very, very good at that. We kind of know where the pitfalls might be or where the challenges may lay. When it comes to upgrading a large company, especially when it comes to training. So here this list just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. This will be distributed online and with the new version. Are there any other questions? Everything's okay? Well, thank you so much for sitting in on this great new version 11 release, now ready for all of you 2D, 3D, and marker making and grading and made-to-measure customers with just tons of new tools. I think that it probably took us a little longer to release it than we wanted, but this was just a very aggressive, rich new update. And I encourage you to contact us to arrange for training or to find out more information. So thank you, everyone.